One who can hold a pencil thinks they can write. They always say, how do I get my script into the right hands? And I say, well, why don't you focus on writing a script that's so damn good it doesn't matter whose hands it falls into. And that's the truth, and you know it. If something's okay, you're not going to do anything with it. But if something's great, even if you can't do anything, you'll pass it on to someone who might be able to, because good scripts have legs. But no one focuses on that. Everyone thinks they already have gold in their hand. And then their second problem is, how do I make sure no one steals my gold? You're not sitting on a pot of gold. You're sitting on a toilet. They don't see that. So focus on learning how to write.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest today. What an honor, Michael Jamin.
Thank you.
I can't believe it. We're here. You got a wedding ring on.
Yep, still married.
And you look happy. So that's
never better. Yeah.
How many years you been married?
Since 25 years. 25 years. Yeah.
25 years. Can I tell you the story?
Please.
It's a true story. You can't make this shit
Yeah.
up. Okay. I'm at Vintage Grocers at Malibu, and you know when you see one of those couples holding hands, the elderly couples that
Yeah.
are so in love, and they're walking like, one step at a time, like an old Tim Conway sketch on the Carol Burnett show or whatever. And I walk up and I say, how long you been married? They say, 50 years.
Uh-huh.
And I look at them, I say, what's the secret to your happy marriage? And the woman leans over and she says, oh, that's easy. We've only had one argument in 50 years. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. And somebody tapped her on the shoulder and she sort of leaned over away, like a few feet away. And now it's just me and the old guy.
Uh-huh.
And he leans over and he looks both ways so she doesn't hear him. And he says, yeah, same fucking argument every day.
That's great.
You can't make that up, right? So 25 years, that's like 103 in LA years.
She was an actress that I met on Just Shoot Me. She was a guest star.
That's not legal, is it?
Back then, it was anything. These were the 90s. It was a different time.
So you would have gotten canceled today.
Yeah, but I suppose. But instead we got married. But yeah.
So she was a guest star.
Yeah.
And I assume after you started going out with her, she was recurring.
No. But she did a bunch of shows. She was like recurring on Friends. And,
awesome.
She worked quite a bit.
Awesome. Awesome. That's quite a success story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to ask you about this because let's face it, there's very few people in this business that have been married to the same woman for 25 years.
Yeah.
And no real, like, noticeable destructive hiccups. They're still going.
Yeah.
How do you work on a show? And you've worked on many shows, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So we all know there's very few people, and you were a showrunner too.
A couple times, yeah.
A couple of times, as well as you've been a lower level writer. You've been all different kinds of things on the trajectory. And there are certain showrunners that back in the day, there's no time limit. It's like you're there and honey, I don't know when I'm coming home. So how do you keep a successful relationship together when you're in a situation where she doesn't know when you're coming home? She just knows when you're leaving.
She even describes it. The other day, she goes, we are that rare Hollywood couple that stayed together. I'm like, which one of us is in Hollywood? Like I'm a writer and she was an actor. The first thing you want to do when you get hired on a staff, you always want to find out if the showrunner's in a happy marriage. Because if they're not, you're going to be there till 4 a.m. But if they are in a happy marriage, you'll get out as soon as possible. So yeah, when we were running shows, we try to keep decent hours, but hopefully I'd be home a little after dinner time, which is decent.
I remember there were only 2 film directors that started in the morning and ended at dinner time.
Like Rob Reiner.
And I never worked with Rob Reiner as a director on a movie, so I wouldn't know that it was him. But it was Clint Eastwood
yeah, that was my other
and
guess.
Jim Abrams.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Those were the only 2 that it was like, hey, we're leaving at this time.
But you also have to be big enough to say, No, that's a wrap. Like if you're a lower director, you don't get to say that's a wrap. You got to work until everything's done because you got to stay on schedule, and you got to be big to say I'm not working until it's after dinner.
The thing that was amazing about seeing Clint Eastwood work was, I mean, it was just fascinating to me because you just see the actor do a take, and he'd be like, "We're good.
We got
moving on."
Yeah.
And, as the actor, you'd just be like, at least the one, I was representing Jay Moore, and I still do, who was on Hereafter with Matt Damon, which was his second movie with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
And I later found out that Clint Eastwood actually, I guess, sort of hurt Matt Damon's feelings the first time they worked together. I believe it was a story of where he does the take and he's been rehearsing, do this take, and he does the take and he says, okay, we're moving on. And Matt says, hey, listen, can we do that again? And Clint said, something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, do you really want to waste all these people's time?
Yeah. Isn't that great?
and like, I would naturally think any actor would want to do it. Like, what's odd is that I understand the philosophy, and we're going to talk about so many things, but like if you're an actor or an actress and you're, let's say, making your short film, or you're making your fake acting reel where you're shooting it like a film, but it's not actually scenes that were on television or streaming or in movies. It's just something where I encourage everybody, listen, I do it 100 times and pick the best one. They don't know the ones that suck. You just put the ones out there that.
Yeah.
But then when you're on the set, you realize when you're show running or when you're executive producing, if you're an actor, you have to pretend, you have to practice and rehearse for when the lights are shining brightest. And when you're looking at all your actors on a show where you're running and you're executive producing, let's say there's 6 series regulars. In your mind, and it's unspoken, there's one that's the most prepared and does the most incredible job on the set.
Yeah.
And then there's the 6th best.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you're rating them on your drive home.
Okay.
They don't know that. They don't even think about that. But in my mind, what I try to stress to all performers and actors is that who wants to be in anything where they don't come out first, where they're not the winner?
Yeah.
Like, what is the purpose of going into an internship job, an assistant job, a writer's assistant, a showrunner, whatever? When you ran a show, I presume you want the network and the studio to say, I was the best showrunner they ever had.
Well, that would be crazy. For me, like, for our goal, we ran like 3 shows. It was always stay on budget.
You and your partner.
Yeah, me and my partner. Don't give them a reason to fire you. Stay on budget. Don't be difficult. Don't give them a reason to fire you. And stay on budget means at the end of the year you want to come a little over budget, but not crazy over budget. That way they give you a little more money next season. You don't want to come under, because if you come under, then they'll give you less. That's how you do it. But don't give them a reason to fire you until you're a giant, hit.
I'm fascinated in the way you worded that, because I didn't picture you would be a guy who would word it that way.
Oh, no, I'm a real bitch. Is it?
Because you're wording it, you're framing it in a negative way. You're framing it like, I'm going into this and just don't get fired, as opposed to let me go into this and fuck these people up and be the best I can be.
Listen, it's about, you don't have that kind of leverage. No one does, unless you're really big. It's really about, you want to do a good job, and you want these people to be your allies, and you don't want to make it feel like it's an adversarial thing. And if you go in, at least my opinion, if you go in fighting, like, you know, you're already fighting with these executives and just digging your feet and, you know, your heels in the sand or whatever the expression is, you'll, you know, they'll find a reason to get rid of you. And so it's really about, it's supposed to be a partnership. It really is. You want to make these people, these executives, at least when we were doing it, make them feel like it's their show too. That way they help fight for it, because they have a boss too. And you want them on your side. You want as many allies as you can fighting for your show, because, you know, if you go around acting like you're a diva and, like, you know, all right, you're a diva until they fire you, then what? Then where are you?
One of the things I always remember, and I'll probably say it till I'm blue in the face, is the first guest I ever had on this podcast was Doug Herzog, who was the president of like 7 networks. And Viacom. And he said whenever he would get a network job, he understood that he was renting the chair.
Yeah.
When you get every job, do you feel like you're renting the chair?
I don't. And first of all, I don't get every job, and that's how you're reminded that you are renting the chair, because sometimes they hire other people. So, yeah, I mean, you just don't. You know, I always feel like you just don't want to be difficult. Don't, because they'll find somebody else to back.
Permission to speak freely,
Please.
So, one of the things about you that always fascinated me is you've won.
Oh.
You've won not once, not twice, not 3 times.
What I win, and where is it? When do I collect it?
Probably 4 or 5 times you've taken the top prize in television, which is I am the executive producer or one of the executive producers of this project. Now, for the audience, just so you know, if I'm not boring the rest of you, in television, the top credit is executive producer.
Yeah.
And there's nothing higher. But in film, the top credit is producer, and the second credit is executive producer. And in television, the second credit, well, sometimes they have co-executive producers, sometimes they don't. It would be a producer, sometimes it's a supervising producer, and they don't have somebody else. It depends on the level of the production. But the EP is the number 1 credit. Yeah. And as far as I can tell, you've been that 4 or 5 times, probably more.
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, we've been showrunner 3 times.
And I want to explain this to the audience as well, because this is one of the things that is not really understood by a lot of people, and it's unspoken. Well, what is a showrunner? Somebody might say, I don't see on any show showrunner Michael Jamin.
Right.
And because there's no WGA credit that's showrunner.
Yeah.
But as a showrunner, I've never known a showrunner that wasn't an executive producer. I've never known one that wasn't. You can find a showrunner that's an executive producer that, like on Curb Your Enthusiasm, I'm going blank on this guy, and I'll have to dub it in later. But he was like essentially an incredible line producer guy. And he was technically helping run the show with Larry, because there were so many things that had to be done in that production in a certain way. But Larry could be assumed was the showrunner because he was giving direction to everybody.
Yeah.
But as Michael being the showrunner, he's responsible for everything, you know, everything that happens. If it goes wrong, Michael is the one that's going to be looked at with the problem. Whereas if he's just a regular executive producer, writer, or creator of a show, and there's a showrunner brought in, something goes wrong, he gets to blame somebody else.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. So the showrunner is the head writer and the executive producer. Usually, they're always executive producer, but a show might have 5 executive producers. One might be a manager who got a title, could be, it could be any number of people. It could be a non-writing producer, executive producer, and you don't know unless you're in the business, you don't know who's the actual showrunner. It's a secret.
But there are times when somebody who's created the show
Yeah.
and writes the show doesn't want that responsibility.
Or they don't have the
or
past.
they don't have the past credit to do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times there's people like, this, I got enough on my plate.
Mhm.
I don't want to be called, I don't want to be responsible for everything. I want to do everything that its showrunner does, but I don't want to be blamed for it.
A lot of people say, I want to be a showrunner. Like, do you know what a showrunner does? If you did know, you probably wouldn't want it.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer not having the responsibilities of being a showrunner, or do you prefer being the showrunner?
I remember when I was still co-executive producer, my partner, I thinking, if we were running the show, we would do better than these guys. And then we finally get the chance to be a showrunner, and you're like, oh my God, it's so hard. Why was I so in such a hurry to be a showrunner? You have a newfound appreciation for how hard it is. And then since then, sometimes we run the show and sometimes we're co-exec, which is like the number 2. And I'm perfectly happy to be the person to help out and not have all that responsibility. If someone gives me that job, great, I'll take it.
Now, I always have a problem pronouncing your writing part.
Sivert Glarum.
Sivert.
It's Norwegian.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you were writing partners for a long time, and then you decided not to be necessarily all the time.
No, I've only done one thing without him, and that was my book. I wrote a book without him. But other than that, we do everything together.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that book, of course.
Here it is.
There it is right there, The Paper Orchestra.
Available at booksellers
everywhere.
Online.
So there's so many things I want to talk to you about regarding this.
Yeah.
I guess for our audience, how did you get your first gig, like as a writer? Take us 48, 72 hours before you got your first gig, and how did you go about getting it? Where were you in your life? What did you have as tools to get the gig?
So that's actually one of the stories in the book, because it's a collection of personal essays. So like David Sedaris, if you like his, you'll like that. And so one of the stories is how I broke into Hollywood. And at the time I was working as a production assistant for a couple of years, hustling.
Where?
Oh, on a bunch of shows. A show called Evening Shade.
Yeah.
With Burt Reynolds. Hearts of
So
Fire.
you applied to production assistant positions, which, for those of you who don't know, essentially the lowest paying and respected job, and you're essentially like a PA.
Yeah.
And so you applied, you did your live interviews, or did you just send in a resume?
I would hustle any way I could. I'd send out a lot of cold calls, a lot of letters, and all you need is one opening, and I got one. And actually, that's another one of the stories. There's 2 stories in the book about how I broke in, because my first job was an assistant at an agency, and that didn't go well.
A theatrical agency.
Yeah, one of the big ones. One of the big ones.
But you're not allowed to say which one it was.
I'd rather not, but it was horrific. I was fired after 3 days.
You were in the mailroom?
No, I had a desk. I got a job on a desk, which is a bump.
Which is very unusual.
Yes.
Normally you have to do a year in the mailroom.
Yep. And
well, I mean, but there, in all fairness to you, I've only known maybe 3 assistants or interns of mine that have gone right to a desk at a major agency and succeeded. You normally have to do the time.
I know. It was an amazing opportunity that was just not right. It was like such high pressure, and that's a funny story in the book. But so I did that, and then
what got you fired?
On my second day, the phones are ringing off the hook, and I'm stressed out.
Which, by the way, this is another odd thing about the business these days, as Michael will tell you, I hope.
Yeah.
So 10, 15 years ago, the percentage of phone calls versus texts and emails was what?
Well, this was 25 years
Let's say
ago.
25
or more. Almost 30. There was no text. There was no email.
Let's presume 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when there was text and emails and phone calls, what was the percentage of phone calls and the percentage of digital?
At agency, I would have no idea. Well, yeah, I don't know.
What about for you when you were on a show?
Yeah, everything's text now. You get a lot of text.
But back then,
Back when I was on a desk, you mean?
No, when you were like working on any television show.
Oh, yeah. Then it was mostly emails. Yeah.
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 And so what's happened, what I'm trying to say is that the trajectory of the business is your phone doesn't even ring, and people would think, oh my God, this is horrible. Your phone doesn't ring. You're a fucking loser. No, you look on your phone, there's 7,000 people trying to get a hold of you that way because they don't want to do it the old-fashioned way.
And they want an answer immediately. That's why.
Yeah, and so it's like this weird thing these days where, and I can't claim that, I'm not inside the walls of CAA or whatever, but I presume that the phone doesn't ring anywhere near as much as it used to because they're directly calling your cell phone or they're directly calling you, emailing or texting. You know what?
I wouldn't have the balls to directly text my agent. I would go through their assistant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's interesting that you...
It's another thing you said that shocks me. I wouldn't have the balls.
I wouldn't have the balls. Yeah.
The one thing I've learned more than anything else, if you're undeniable, you cannot be denied. There is no one out there that has the experience that I have in the entertainment business. Throughout my career, I've been humbled to work with over 25 of the most extraordinary comedy entertainers in the world. One time, a fluke, but 25 times, it's crazy. I'm here to help you create holy shit moments that will blow people the fuck away. You want to do a 5-minute set for late night? I can help you. You want to produce your feature film? I can make it happen. You want to shoot your hour special? Done. You want to do a documentary with Emmy award-winning producers? I can make it happen. It doesn't matter what you want to do. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And this is your opportunity.
I mean,
this is what's fascinating about you, and we're going all over the place. So I'm sitting across from the guy who says he wouldn't have the balls to do something. Yet he has the balls to start social media, put his perspective on the business in social media, write a one-person show, go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival across the world, and promote it and perform it when he's not a guy who technically was known as a performer. So he has the balls to put himself out there in the world. And you know what's odd about this podcast, and I'm going to go on a little rant here, that probably one of the people in this room has heard, and it's almost weird because I want to hear so much from you, and I'm going to, and I got plenty of time, but I think this is important for the audience, and I hope they don't get mad at me. What Michael did in writing this book and doing the one-person show and going on social media, I have so much respect for, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if you're a writer out there, I hope you don't shut this off. I don't care if you're Judd Apatow or if you're Noah Baumbach or Cameron Crowe or whoever you are. You're in a prehistoric profession. You're like in radio these days when there's IMAX films.
You're going to make me cry.
And I'm going to tell you why I have so much respect for Michael. So when Michael writes a script, and it's the greatest script he's ever written in his life, the greatest thing you've ever written. What is the maximum amount of people that will read that script? The actual script.
If it's not going to be shot or aired, you mean?
Even if it's aired, the written material, what's the maximum amount of people that read the greatest script you've ever read
if
in
I'm
your
in
life?
production, so you have all the writers, let's say 10 writers, you have the support team, you got, all right, so that's another 10, a couple dozen people maybe.
24 people.
Yeah.
And let's say he's not in production. Let's say he writes his own pilot that he creates. And he goes out to agents and studios and whatever. Still, maximum 24 people.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Michael said, you know what? This is crazy. I have to go one person at a time to read something. I have to do this, and I have to go this archaic, prehistoric process to get my stuff made. And then he makes his first post on social media.
Yeah.
And within 1 hour, that post has more people who watched it.
Yeah.
1,000 more people than watched it that read the greatest script that he ever wrote in his entire lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's what Michael determined and had the balls to do. Because, video content and audio content is king. It gets distributed in your phone. I was saying to one of my assistants here, look, if I could ever invent something that was the YouTube for scripts, where it's like every script is online, everything that Amy wrote is online. You can actually look at, instead of the view time, like if somebody had an hour special, you can get a view count.
Yeah.
Like, okay, your average view count is 23 minutes. On your hour, you could say, hey, your script, your average read count is 12 pages or whatever.
Yeah.
And then people would have their stuff read. But there's nothing like that in the world. And so Michael has been working and succeeding in what I consider to be, sadly, an archaic system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you write a book, at least when you write a book, you put your stuff on paper and you get it distributed and it's out there. Now, not to shit on Michael, well, I don't care if this is a bestseller. He does one post and he's going to have more views than the people who bought this book.
That's sadly true.
But still, he did it and he put it together.
But you know what though? When I wrote the book, I'm at one of the biggest agencies in Hollywood, and I tell my agent, "Hey, I want to write a book. I want to get it out there." And he was like, "Hey, good luck." Right? And it's because how would that put money in his pocket? It doesn't. See, he was absolutely of no help at all because he doesn't make money. He's not making money off that. And if he was, it wouldn't be enough anyway to get him interest. So it was all, well, good for you. Do it on your, good. And I was like, I want to perform it. I want to tour. Good luck. I mean, literally zero help. Not that I was expecting anything, but all right, I'll just do it myself.
And I interviewed Phil Rosenthal, and we talked a lot about this as well when he came up with the idea of the show. He's changed the name a few times. The Feeding Phil show.
Yeah.
He went to his agents and he says, I got an offer from PBS. They're like, hey, listen, we got a show running offer for you for 2 years with Chuck Lorre. We think you should take that. I don't want to take that. I want to do the show on PBS.
Yeah.
But you're not going to make any money. So what? I'm happy. I love doing this. And he did it, and now he's doing personal appearances where he's selling out like 3,000 seats.
Isn't that amazing? Good for him.
And so this is a world where everything's possible. But I think for you being here, what's great is that this audience is going to get to hear what it takes to get there. And so you go and you find the entry level position in the area that you want to work in.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is essentially find your affiliation.
I say get as close as physically possible to the job that you want.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you're there as a PA, you see the operation.
Yeah.
What's your next step to get a job as a writer?
Then you start churning out spec scripts, sample to prove that you know how to write.
Tell our audience what a spec script
Wait,
is.
you have an audience? A spec script.
I have two here. At
There's
least
a couple of people here. There's it's a sample script, and it could be as to prove that you know how to write. So it could be a script of an existing show, a sample script, or it could be an original pilot. But it's something that proves that you're not even trying to sell it. You're just trying to prove that you know how to write.
So the spec pilot is your original work.
Yeah.
Your original concept. And the spec script is, let's say, Family Guy. You write an episode of Family Guy and to write to each character that's never been on the show before. Okay, which one do you do?
Well, I wrote, it might have been, this is a long time ago. It might have been a Golden Girls. This is, and I got it in the hands of an agent. And that's one of the stories there. And she loved it. And she's like, and she brought me into her office. I'm going to make you a show. In 3 years, you're going to be, she said, I sign a new baby writer every year. In 3 years, you're going to run your own show. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm on cloud nine. And then I'm like, I'm terrified, but I'm excited. And then when I sobered up, I was like, I wonder what happened to the previous baby writer that she signed. What show is he running? So I get his number and I call him up, and I'm going to be very respectful because obviously he's running a show. He's very talented. And I call him up and he says, what show am I running? I work in a fucking record store, dude. And that was Sievert Glarum. That was how I met my partner. So we had the same agent, and he was the chosen one before me, and we teamed up.
Normally, the logical thing would always be you want to team up with somebody who adds more value to you.
Exactly. Go on, and I'll tell you how that worked.
So what was it about him working in the record store that you thought was more valuable to you after you just signed with this agent?
So I was hotter because I was just signed, and he was cold because he hadn't done anything in 3 years. But we traded scripts. He was a better writer. And I read his, and I go, this guy knows how to write. And he liked my script, but I thought he was better.
What did you know how to do better that he didn't?
Well, in terms of, I was hotter because I was just signed. I was the new chosen one.
No, but when you get together, what is it that we know his strength? You said he's a better writer. What are you better at?
Well, at that
time.
So when you're doing comedy, at the time, you'd fall into two categories. You're either a story person or a joke person.
And if you don't mind me interrupting, so a lot of times one of the things when you're writing a script, which this young man will tell you, which is a horrible thing when you want to be funny, is that story trumps jokes.
Oh, all the time.
And so you have to kill jokes to drive the story, and then you have to pray that your writers and your actors can come up with little things on the floor or right before the floor that makes things as funny as humanly possible. Or you pitch
it on the floor. But yeah, you're right. Story is way more important than jokes. So he was a story guy. I was a joke guy. And then over the years, we kind of evened out. Like I really learned how to do story because that's what's more important. But the joke person's the hero. If you're in the joke and you're in the room and you pitch a great joke and everyone laughs, you're a hero. But the story person is more important for sure.
When you ran rooms, the staff that you hired, I've been told that by certain showrunners that sometimes there's an opening for like a baby writer, but and when I say a baby writer, a new writer, and instead they'll hire somebody who is just a guy who at 2:00 in the morning jumps on the table, pours water over his head, and says, "Let's get it going." Something like somebody who like makes the room laugh, but has no discernible skill at all, but just helps the morale.
I think those people existed more maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago when the budgets were higher. Nowadays, I don't think they have the money to do that.
When you had a budget for a young writer, did you always hire a comedy team? Because this is what's fascinating that maybe a lot of you don't know, is that the tough part about having a writing partner in the Writers Guild is you get paid the same amount as a single writer.
You split it.
So he was making 50% of what other people were making. So a lot of showrunners hire comedy teams who write because they get two writers.
Yeah, and I but not only that, like because I have hired many comedy writing teams. I think that scripts written by teams tend to be better than scripts written by individuals for comedy, because I'll pitch when my partner are writing, I'll pitch a joke. I don't know if it's funny until someone's laughing, and vice versa. So it's like that's why I think it's tighter. Not always the case, but I think teams are really good for comedy.
And so when you do write a script and with your partner, who has veto power?
Yeah. Usually the person at the keyboard, but sometimes we'll horse trade. Someone say, all right, I'll give you your piece of shit if you put my piece of shit. That's how that goes. But in the end, in the beginning it was very much about ego. But over the years you go, like, if he pitches a great joke, like, great. And that's one less thing I got to do, and I'll take credit for his joke too.
When you're a comedy team and you get to the highest levels, the executive producer rank, is it possible for your agent to say, hey, you want these guys, great, but we're going to separate them as writers and now they're getting paid? So when you get to that level, you get to call the shots as to how your deal is negotiated, and you cut yourselves. I
think that a bunch of writers on Friends were able to do that. If you're on a big enough hit, anything is possible.
So I presume you did that.
I was never on a big enough hit to make that possible.
I have to talk to you about this before we go on. Going back to you branding yourself and going out there in the world. And your content is really, really inspirational. And it's really wonderful. And I'm not just saying that. It's and we've had many conversations, and I'm always challenged by conversations I have with people who I respect more than myself. And I remember you came to me with your project and you showed it to me, and I just wanted to tell you how I felt. I didn't know. It was just my opinion, which is all I ever get.
I'll share this. So I came to you. This is maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I told you I was going to perform and tour, and I had a poster mocked up, and I didn't want to put much money or time into it because I was like, I don't know where this is going. This is my first time, and I send it to you, and you go, no. You got to come up with a better artwork. You got to invest in artwork. And I go, okay, and I did. I took your advice. This is what I can, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's great. It's me coming out of a typewriter because I'm a writer who performs.
And what was the original one?
I don't even remember, but it was
no you
good.
Like in front of like a library wall.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Yeah, it was terrible. But I took your advice and I was grateful for it.
And it sometimes if you're out there and you're listening or watching this, it's like it's one of the most difficult things in the world because with your friend or somebody you respect so much, you don't want to be a yes person. You just want to tell them what they want to hear, but you don't want to have them never talk to you again.
But it was all new. Like performing was new to me, and that's why I definitely felt like imposter syndrome. And it was very weird for me to perform for the first time, even though I write. Yeah.
Well, it obviously very successful. You sold out every show at the Edinburgh Festival.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen by somebody who's a bum.
So like I said, I've sold out every show, still lost money.
Yeah, but
that's how it goes.
Another thing for the audience, there's people in this room right now who shall remain nameless because I don't want to incriminate them, that have dedicated hours and hours and hours and hours to hanging around me. Mm-hmm. Now, I wouldn't dedicate hours to hang around me.
But you know a lot. You've been around.
But I'm just saying, so I understand my place in this world, and I know that both of the people in this room are going to do really well. The longer they hang around me, I know that they're going to get what they want. I can't guarantee that they're going to take my advice and do things the way I think they should do it.
Right.
But I really believe that it's shocking to me sometimes, and maybe it is to you too, when you offer something, words of wisdom, and they actually are taken and they work.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of this, and I'm very proud of because I consider you to be just an extraordinary person and an extraordinary artist. Not only that, but then you got the personal life, an extraordinary relationship.
Yeah.
Then you have the writing team, an extraordinary relationship.
Yeah.
You write this beautiful book. You put the show on. I mean, it's like, and I know if I get inside your head, I know you're probably not feeling the way I'm feeling all the time. But you've won so many times. Now you look
Yeah,
at the
I think
show.
so.
Oh well, we didn't make money. We sold out. We didn't make money.
Yeah.
Well, respect outlasts cash. And
Mhm.
I do this podcast in my spare time. I love that people watch it and it helps them and they learn stuff from people like yourself. This episode, I've talked way too much, so hopefully the second half I'll let you talk. But you are somebody who anybody listening should know that no matter if you won the fucking spelling bee in 7th grade or you won the baking prize at the fair, first prize, or whatever it is, just take whatever you did that was number one and do those same things that carry over, and it's going to keep being successful. And my guess is that you took a lot from your successes early on to make the new successes.
Yeah. But and you know what though, like before I perform, there's almost every time, like I'm nervous. I'm backstage. I'm pacing for like an hour, burning up all my energy, like you're not supposed to do. I go through all my acting rituals, whatever, but I'm pacing, and then right before the curtain, goes up, I always say to myself, "Why am I doing this?" Because I'm making myself sick. Why am I doing this? And then the answer I always come back with is because you can, and that's it. And then, and it's I'm privileged that I get to do this, and I'm happy that I get to apply all this stuff that I've acquired from my 28-year career as a TV writer to try it in a new medium. To just because like time's running out. Only have so much energy. Like performing at the Fringe, I was one of the older performers.
You
for
look
a
like
reason.
you're 32 years
I
old.
appreciate that. I'm something a little bit older than that. But
Yeah, me too.
but I'm one of the older performers, and with reason. Like it's so much energy. It's so much energy required, but to get to reinvent yourself and to try something, because you don't get time's running out. Like it's either now, if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? Not going to get It's not going to get easier.
That's true. I do not believe that time. Well, maybe as a writer, because there's a lot of ageism with writers. But then, I've interviewed the late Gary Marshall, and there was no ageism with him.
Yeah, but
Peter Engel, there was no ageism with him.
Yeah.
But it is never too late if you're a performer. And
I talk with a lot of performers about it. I went to them the way I went to you for help. It was like, and I talked to artists. What is art? And I had these long conversations with people. What is art? Because I'm interested in making art. What is it? And then I would watch YouTube videos from artists, mostly musicians, talking about their art. Because that's what I was interested. I've made commerce sitcoms for years, but I've never really done art. So that's what I wanted to do. And then, but what is art? What is the responsibility that art has to society? How do you go up? How do you even begin to make art? And I would listen to musicians talk about it, and I go, okay, I'm going to try to do that. And then I would talk with, like I said, I talk with John Mayer. He happens to follow me on Instagram, and I reached out to him to come up with a blurb for my book, and I didn't really know him, and I DM'd him, and literally like 15 minutes later, and I was nervous about reaching out to him. 15 minutes later, he goes, "Oh, I just finished a gig. I'm driving back to the hotel. Yeah, send me something to read." I was like, "Oh my God!" So I send him, and then he read the story. He goes, "Oh my God, I love it." And he gave me a great quote that I use, and then we wound up DMing for probably about an hour and a half. And I'm asking him, what about art? I'm asking him, how do you go? But when you run out of stories, when you run out of songs to write, what do you write about? And then he was just getting, how do you know when something's done? And he was giving me so much fascinating advice. It was such an interesting conversation. And I was turning to not writers. When I was writing this book, I didn't want to turn to other writers because I have plenty of writer friends. I wanted to turn to musicians for some reason.
Well, I think because musicians, this is what's incredible about, just take somebody like John Mayer. So he writes his song, and his song is, let's say, 3 minutes and 30 seconds long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's done.
Yeah.
And then when he makes his music video, his content, the thing he's doing is just taking the images he shot. Okay, where does this go here? But it's It's in a finite place. It's set. It's 3 minutes and 30 seconds. There's no lengthening it. There's no shortening it. That's it. Your art, your one-person show, you write it. Okay, I put it up. Okay, let's live audience. Let's cut this. Let's do this. Let's move this way. Your book. You print it out. Oh, the editor's like, okay, let's cut this. Let's do this. Let's put the button here. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole different kind of thing than a musical artist in my mind. They're always dealing with a finite thing.
Yeah, but you also put together an album, and then an album. I'm listening to Roland Orzabal from Tears for Fears, which I love, and you know how he assembles an album and how it has to have a flow and how each song has a makes part of the rhythm. So the same thing with the book. I wanted there to be a flow to it in terms of, okay, this story is fast and happy. This one's sad. This one goes, but this one's, and so there are waves that you ride if you read it in order.
You know social media is important. You see comics blowing up all the time and selling out shows all over the country because of it, but you have no idea how they're doing it. Well, what if you could have someone who's done it before guiding you every single step of the way? My name is Braden Cody, and over the past 4 years, I've worked with some of the biggest comedians in the world, making viral content for them every single day that's accumulated over 1 billion views. And now I want to help you be the next comic to make a career for themselves on social media. That's why me and Barry created the Social Media Blueprint. It is the only social media program designed specifically for comedians. We have a full course with detailed tutorials, downloadable templates, and weekly calls with me and Barry, where we'll give you personalized guidance and advice to get you in front of the audience we both know you deserve. If you don't take this opportunity to take your career to the next level, someone else will. So click the link in the description to join the Social Media Blueprint today.
All right, let's go way back. Take me back where your family's from.
Yeah.
What was the socioeconomic dynamic? What was your inspiration to getting into this crazy f***ed up business?
I grew up in New York.
New York City?
No, about a half hour north of the city. And, parents were comfortable. I didn't have a struggle. My parents got divorced, when I was in high school. But I remember watching, my parents didn't watch TV at all. But my uncle came to stay with us for a couple months, and he's like, let's watch Cheers. I'm like, are you sure you're allowed to watch TV? Like, my dad would have said no. Like, my dad would never watch TV, but my uncle watched TV. And so we watched Cheers together, and I was like, wow. So here's an adult that respects television. And I was like, maybe I could become a TV writer. Wouldn't that be great to write all the lines for Cliff, not knowing how it works. So yeah, I wanted to be a writer. And then I moved out to LA, and then I wound up getting a job years later on a show that shot on the Cheers soundstage. And I was like, I made it, but I'm too late. But I made it.
Well, you're too late for Cheers.
You're too late for Cheers, yeah.
What was your first big break?
Well, I had a couple of little breaks. One was writing, my first freelance episode was a freelance episode of Lois and Clark. And I was the assistant to 2 showrunners.
Which was not necessarily considered a comedy, although it did have some comedy lines in it.
It was a light drama. And so I was their assistant for maybe, 2 years.
Writer's assistant?
I was their personal assistant, really.
Got it, okay.
And they were the showrunners. And then I left, and then I wound up asking if I could pitch. When they took over Lois and Clark, I asked if I could pitch, and they were gracious enough. They said yes, which is a big deal. So we came up with a bunch of pitches, and they bought one, and they shot it. And I write a story about them in my next book. And they actually
at the time, what was the Writers Guild minimum for a script? 25,000.
Yeah, it was it was probably around that. It was an hour long. It was probably around 22 or 25, and they came to see me perform. I was their assistant.
Stand up.
No. When I did my show, my solo show.
But you did stand up back then, right?
Well, I did stand up in high school, in college rather.
But they came to see
the show. They came to see the show, and they were so proud, and like there were tears in their eyes. They were so proud of me.
Incredible.
And yeah, it was great. It was great, and I hated working for them.
Oh wow! But they didn't know.
Well, it wasn't their fault. I just hated the job. But they were nothing wrong with them. I just hated the job.
1, 2,
3, 4, 5,
5,
6
6 degrees of separation.
6 Degrees of Separation. I'm going to mention some names.
Yeah.
Tell me what comes to mind.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we could try.
Mark Maron.
Yeah, well, so Mark was the star of, we were the showrunners of his show on IFC, Maron. And we didn't know him, but I guess our agent set it up. And we met him at a diner on Sunset Boulevard for the job. And I remember because he was eating steak and eggs for breakfast. So I was like, who eats steak and eggs? Like, that's not a Hollywood thing you eat. That's what I remember, though. And he was shoveling food in his face. And he was like, you guys think you can capture the voice of a grumpy, out-of-work comic? And at the time, my partner and I, we had been unemployed for like 6 months and we were losing hope. And I was like, yeah, I think I can. And so Mark hired us.
Did you ever find out who your competition was?
No, I don't. No, and I don't even want to. But he hired us, and I really learned a lot about writing. Mark was one of the writers, and I learned a lot from him running that show because he had a certain tone that he wanted. He didn't want it to be jokey. He wanted it to be real, and he was incredibly brave. Like he would say, "I want to do a story about this," and then he'd pitch in the room. And I remember one time it was like incredibly personal, and I go, "Are you sure you want to do that, Mark?" And he's like, "Why wouldn't I?" I go, "Because it doesn't really cast you in a good light, you know?" He goes, "I don't care." It was almost like a dumb question. I don't care. It's true. And I was like, wow, very brave of him. And then when I was writing this book, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I don't care if it doesn't cast me in a good light. The book is my version of the show.
Amazing. And I will say, Mark Maron, at this moment in time, is one of the top 10 best actors who does stand-up comedy in the world.
And he invented himself. Because he was a struggling, he had a show. He was a stand-up comic. He was struggling. He also had a radio show and they got fired from. And then, he couldn't get arrested. So he started a podcast. And this is back when no one knew what a podcast was. And he did it in his garage. And his manager's like, well, how are you going to monetize this? And he's like, I don't know.
And that manager wasn't his manager much longer.
Right, yeah. And we wound up doing an episode about that.
He was actually a fantastic manager. But sometimes, no matter how great a manager you are, that doesn't mean every marriage is going to work.
Yeah. But I mean, Mark invented himself. And he just did it. You talk about the balls of doing it. Well, he did it.
George Lopez.
Yeah, well, so George was, we were writers on his show. He had a show on TV Land, second season. George is very, very generous guy. And people don't know that about him, I don't think. He was very easy to work with, but he was very generous to people, to the community, to his community, I think. And he was very easy to work with. And yeah, it was a pleasure.
I think those first two names I mentioned, in my mind, and if they were sitting here, I would say it, they are very challenging artists.
Mark is definitely challenging. He'd be the first one to tell you that.
Because I think the stress and the pressure and the chemicals inside or whatever, George is so passionate, but so a lot of times can be up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark too, in terms of how, but at the end of the day, the talent just always rises. You just never see a performance from George. I've never seen a performance from George.
Mm-hmm.
Or Mark on screen
George came ready to work. He was prepared.
They give it all. It's it's so great.
Yeah.
David Spade.
So Spade I worked for on Just Shoot Me, and then several years later on Rules of Engagement. And again, Spade was a pro. And I remember, Just Shoot Me, he just came off Saturday Night Live, and then he would do the table reads, and he wasn't giving it as all the table read. And what we learned to discover was he was saving it for show night. And at show night, he would bring it. And so then you just learn to trust him. You're like, okay, he's going to lay back the table read because he's going to bring it hard in front of the audience.
Michael Eisner.
Yeah, so Michael Eisner, he ran Disney for many years, and then he had his own production company. And he had this idea for a TV show that he hired called Glenn Martin DDS. It was an animated show, and he hired a young writer to write the pilot, and then he hired my partner and I to run the show. Yeah. And he put he was the money behind it and the idea behind it.
Christopher Lloyd.
Chris Lloyd is seriously. So he he ran Frasier for many years, and has more. Been to his house once, and he has more Emmys on his mantle than you think it's going to fall over because he's got so many Emmys on it. And he's honestly one of the best comedy writers in Hollywood. Period.
What's fascinating on Modern Family, there was 2 showrunners.
Yeah.
Him,
Steve Levitan.
and Steve Levitan.
And we work for both.
And unbelievably, I don't expect the audience to believe this. They didn't get along.
Yep.
They never were on the set at the same time. They rotated. One person would take one episode, one person would take the other, working with the same crew.
And it worked out great because it made the hours better for the whole staff, and the quality of the show was fantastic because they were both extremely competent showrunners.
The one quality that makes a script stand out and the one quality that makes a script stand down.
A lot of times, that's the easier question is if the story doesn't start soon enough, the audience, you're going to lose the audience. And so that's the first thing that jumps out to me is I'm on page 5. When does the story start? All I see here is just 2 characters talking or bullshitting or talking about nothing. And that's going to get old. So that's the problem. That'll sink a script when the story is clear and compelling and your act breaks pop. That's the first thing my partner always say. We got to make those act breaks pop. My partner always used to joke, I don't even care about Act 3. By the time Act 3 rolls around, we already got the advertising dollars. But you got to make that first act break pop and the second act break pop.
I always find that pilot episodes are so challenging because you have to establish all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, in commercials, in 21 minutes, you have to have the A story, the B story, and you have to introduce 4, 5, 6 characters that everybody knows and wants to see next
And
week.
it gets worse because you'll always get a note from the executive. They'll all right, so I did it. Here's a story with 22 minutes, and they'll say, but I want to know more about this character. Yeah, I know, but we have 22 minutes. We can't possibly. And they make you answer questions that no one's ever going to ask because they're worried about, we don't know enough about this character, and that waters down the whole thing.
Beavis and Butthead.
So Beavis and Butthead. We worked in the second iteration. The showrunners of King of the Hill, Dave Krinsky and John Altschuler, they were running the second iteration of Beavis and Butthead with Mike Judge. And they reached out to us, hey, you guys want to write a freelance episode of Beavis and Butthead? Because that was only freelance. There was no staff. And we said yes on the spot. And it worked out great because we had just wrapped on a show. So we had a couple months before our next gig started. And we just banged out a few episodes. The money was terrible. We didn't do it for the money. We did it because we said it was a chance to write for Beavis and Butthead.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Your proudest moment in show business.
Proudest moment. This is so silly, but my proudest moment, the thing is my book. I feel like it's the best thing I've ever written, and I did it myself. And and when I'll get fan mail from that, and that means more to me than whatever millions of people watching whatever episode of TV I wrote.
Did you start by self-publishing or did you get a publisher?
I did it. So I got an agent pretty easily, and then we started talking.
A book agent,
yeah. And he said, in this genre, platform drives acquisition. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, that means you have to have a big social media following. I go, well, how big is big? I wasn't on social media.
What did he say? How big is big?
He goes, I don't know. And I go,
he said, I don't know.
He goes, I don't know. And I go, is that 500,000 big? I didn't know either. I wasn't on social media. It goes, 500,000 big? He goes, oh yeah, that's big. I go, give me a year. I'll give you 500,000. And I was bullshitting. I was, because you talk to an agent.
500,000 subscribers or
followers.
Followers.
Yeah. And he goes, okay. And so I started.
How many did you have after a year?
Well, probably 750,000.
How did you get 750,000 followers? Will you explain that to me? What am I missing?
Well, you got to whore yourself out.
No, what I'm asking is so to me, again, I'm going toe to toe with you.
Mm.
How many followers do you have now on Instagram?
About 750 million. It's platforms.
750,000. Okay. So to me, like if you have 750,000,
Yeah.
you have the algorithm of every city, what your best city is. Okay, my best city is New York. My second best city is LA.
Yeah.
My third is Chicago. My fourth is Jacksonville. And then you go and you put your show up in all those cities and you go across the country. Are you doing that?
Yeah, but it's not as easy as you think, because the algorithm will only show your content like to a fraction of your followers.
Well, I mean, a comedian has 750,000. They're at least going to be able to do one night at a C comedy club.
That's what I do. I'll do like, it's more than that. I'll do a few nights in a 50-seater.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Next question. Your biggest disappointment in show business and how you used it to fuel yourself to the next level.
Well, the biggest, Hollywood doesn't know any of us are living. My biggest
Hollywood doesn't what?
Oh, any of us are living.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so my disappointment is like, you always think people are going to want to work for you, want to help you. No one really, here's the thing. No one gives a shit what I want. People only care what they want. And that goes for agents, managers, whatever. Like, no one's trying to make my career. They want me to make their career. I get it. That's how that works. And so you have to, knowing that, it empowers you to, okay, I'm going to have to really do this myself. I don't know if it's a disappointment, but I was a little disappointed in, like, I kind of thought that publishing would be the same way. I thought publishing world would be more like you'd be judged on the merit of your work, and that's not really how it is in literature. It's really more like, well, do they think they can sell it? Do they think they can sell it?
Lastly, what advice do you have for the young person growing up in a small town and has $1 and a dream and wants to be in this business in a certain area, let's say as a writer, and to be able to break in, get in there, move up, and have the kind of extraordinary career that you've had, but also the advice after you've done it and you're doing something really, really well. What advice do you have for somebody to just be uncomfortable with the situation and go out and do something that you've never done before, like social media or a one-person show or a book?
I could talk to both that. So the first thing is everyone who can hold a pencil thinks they can write. And they'll put their script. Here's my script. How do I get it shot? It's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And why don't you write, like, they always say, how do I get my script into the right hands? And I say, well, why don't you focus on writing a script that's so damn good it doesn't matter whose hands it falls into. And that's the truth. And you know it, because you'll get it. If something's okay, but you're not going to do anything with it. But if something's great, even if you can't do anything, you'll pass it on to someone who might be able to, because good scripts have legs. But no one focuses on that. Everyone thinks they already have gold in their hand. And then their second problem is, how do I make sure no one steals my gold? You're not sitting on a pot of gold. You're sitting on a toilet. They don't see that. So focus on learning how to write. The second thing about this imposter syndrome, which is what I had very much so even when I got on social media for the first time, because I'm like, here I'm posting about TV. I'm not Chuck Lorre. I'm not Chris Lloyd. I'm not Steve Levitan. I'm not Shonda Rhimes. I don't have any of their money or success. I'm a working writer who's made a pretty good career for himself, but I'm not a big shot. And so here I am going on social media, and here I am performing and getting people to come to my shows. Even as I had a nervous breakdown there before, as we were starting to sell tickets to my first show. I'm like, people were flying to see me. People were coming to see my show. They're huge fans. And I'm like, but who the f am I? I'm just a TV writer. Who am I? So I had to give myself permission to be the person I wanted to be before I was him.
Say that last sentence again. That's beautiful. You had to be the kind of person to give yourself...
I had to give myself permission to be the person that I wanted to be before I was him. And so it's like, okay, I'm an actor now. What do actors do? How do they warm up? How do they rehearse? How do they treat? Here's another thing. The first time my wife, who was an actor, she directs the show and she produces the solo show. And, we're rehearsing. And during the first rehearsal, she mocks applause, and I take the stage, and I kind of very humbly take the stage. Wrong. What'd I do wrong? I just walked on the stage. She goes, when you walk on the stage, you got to walk on like you're a fucking rock star. Like people are here to see you, and you know it, and you're happy, and you're a rock star. I go, but I'm not a rock star. I'm a middle-aged TV writer. They didn't pay to see a middle-aged TV writer. They paid to see a rock star. Now you do it again and walk on as a rock star. And that's how I walk on stage now.
And then later that night, you go home, you
like,
close the bedroom door. No, wrong. Wrong.
But
you walk in this bedroom like you're a rock star.
She was right, though, because people don't want to see a sad sack or even someone, not even necessarily a sad sack, but someone who's like humble, or they want to see, they're paying to see a show. Give them a show. Another thing I get from aspiring writers is they have a script and they work on this script. They've been working on it for 3 years, 4 years, draft after draft. And what I always say is stop polishing that turd. That's what you're doing. You will gain much more as a writer if you write your script, great, put it down, start a second one, finish it, put it down, third one, fourth. And I guarantee you by the time you hit your fifth script and you're done with that, your fifth script will be so much better than your first script ever would be had you just kept on polishing that turd. Put it away and stop fighting for that one. Get to the fifth one. And that's how you grow as a writer. That's how you get better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Michael Jamin, this has been incredibly inspirational. What an honor. I'm so excited. I think the audience is going to love this. Let me rephrase it. Yeah. I know the audience is going to love it. And thank you for taking the time, man.
Thank you, man. What a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Good luck with the book. Good luck with the one-person show.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Thank you so much.